When you think about Canada's environment, it's easy to just picture forests and lakes, but it's so much more than that. It's this tangled web of jobs, politics, and the choices you and I make every single day. So let's jump right in and try to unravel this clash of interest to see what's really going on. Okay, to really get what we're talking about, I want to start with a question. We've got two journeys here that look like they're from completely different worlds. But what's the connection? What do they have in common? So, on the one hand, you've got a cyclist, right? Just trying to get to work in this city. And on the other, wow, a worker behind the wheel of one of the biggest dump trucks on the planet, out in Alberta's oil sands. What's wild is that both of these people, in their own way, are making choices about energy, about how we get around, about our economy. And honestly, these two pictures, they pretty much sum up the entire environmental puzzle we're facing in Canada. And look, this whole thing isn't just some high-level debate about industry or government policies. Not at all. This stuff affects everyone. And for a lot of young Canadians, it's something they think about a lot. It's super personal. So let's start right there. Let's hear what's on their minds. Take Graham, for example. He's in grade 9, and he's not mincing words. He points the finger straight at big industry. He's worried that companies are just taking the easy way out by polluting our rivers and air. And he thinks it's up to the government to step in and make the standards tougher. Then there's Michelle. Her focus is on the animals, on what global warming is doing to wildlife. She brings up something a community elder told her, and it's really powerful. The idea that this is about protecting our home, that we all have a shared responsibility. She says it's everybody's world, and that really hits home. And Cassandra? She brings this huge issue right down to something we can all relate to, our shopping carts. She's looking at all the waste, the overflowing landfills, the crazy amount of packaging on everything we buy. And it's such a great point, right? It shows how even something tiny, like a candy wrapper, is actually a piece of this much, much bigger system. Okay, so we've heard from students worried about pollution, wildlife, and waste. Those are the personal stakes. But who are the big players in this whole conversation? I mean, who's actually at the table? Well, as you can probably guess, it's complicated. There are a lot of different groups with very different goals. First up, you've got the workers and the companies. We're talking about people on oil rigs, folks in forestry. For them, natural resources aren't just some abstract environmental thing. It's their job. It's how they pay their bills. It's economic stability for their communities. So yeah, for them, their livelihoods are literally on the line. Then, a huge and crucial voice in this is Aboriginal peoples. Their collective rights are tied directly to the land in a way that's fundamental to their culture and history. And of course, you've got the governments, federal, provincial, who have this incredibly tough job of trying to juggle everything. They have to balance economic growth with protecting the environment, all while getting pulled in a million different directions by political pressure. And rounding it out, you have environmental groups who are pushing hard for more protection. And then there's us, all of us, the consumers. The fact is, our demand for everything from the gas in our cars to the plastic wrap on our food, that's what keeps this whole economic engine running. So you see, everyone has a stake in this. All right, so now we have a sense of who's involved. Let's zero in on one of the biggest, most talked about issues at the heart of all this, climate change. And to really understand what's going on, we got to look at the numbers and see how it's actually affecting people in the real world. So what are we even talking about when we say climate change? Well, the UN's big scientific panel keeps it pretty simple. It's a rise in the planet's average temperature, and it's mainly caused by burning fossil fuels. The impacts, though, they're anything but simple. We're talking rising sea levels, more extreme weather, and whole ecosystems getting thrown out of whack. Okay, check this out. What's so striking here is where these emissions are coming from. It's not spread out evenly at all. Back in 2005, you had Alberta with the oil industry and Ontario with all its manufacturing, and just those two provinces were responsible for almost 60% of Canada's total CO2 emissions. Just two. And here's the part that's so tough to wrap your head around, a real tragic irony. The places that produce the least emissions, like Canada's north, are the ones that are predicted to get hit the hardest. Climate change is a direct threat to the traditional way of life for the Inuit, because their home, well, it's warming up faster than almost anywhere else on the planet. When you look at the big picture, the international stage, Canada's position on this has been, well, let's just say it's been a bit of a moving target. A perfect example is the Kyoto Protocol. That was the big international deal to cut greenhouse gases. This timeline really shows how fast things can change. A new government gets elected, and boom, the priorities shift from meeting those international targets to focusing on the economy at home. And if you want to see this conflict between the economy and the environment play out in real time, there's no better place to look than Alberta's oil sands. I mean, it is the absolute perfect case study for this huge clash of interests. So here's one side of the argument, coming straight from Alberta's premier back in 2007. The message couldn't be clearer. The oil sands are an economic powerhouse. They create jobs, they create wealth. And he said the government's job isn't to touch the brakes. Nope, it's to let the free market do its thing.
But there was a very different take on this. A whole bunch of groups, environmentalists, First Nations, even healthcare workers, they all got together. And they put out this newspaper ad with a completely opposite message. They were calling for a full-on stop to any new oil sands projects, pointing to things like pollution, the huge amount of water being used, and the fact that Indigenous communities weren't being properly consulted.
And when you lay the two arguments out side by side like this, man, you really see how deep the divide is. This isn't some simple good guy versus bad guy story. Not at all. It's a clash of totally legitimate values. On one side, you've got this incredible job creation, 1 in 4 new jobs in Canada at the time. But on the other, it's the fastest growing source of greenhouse gas emissions. Both sides have powerful facts on their side, which makes finding a simple answer feel, well, pretty much impossible. So with a debate this heated and this divided, you might be thinking, okay, so how does anything ever get done? How does change even happen? That's a great question. Let's take a look at a few of the ways people are trying to make a real difference. You know, sometimes change starts really small. Check this out. A group of high school students, they didn't wait for someone to tell them what to do. They went out, they raised money, they raised awareness, and they got solar panels installed right on their school. They literally took renewable energy out of the textbooks and into real life. It's just an awesome example of what people can do when they take action themselves. A longtime environmentalist named Cliff Wallace has a more, let's say, strategic plan. He says there are 2 key steps. First, build a network. Find people who care everywhere you can, inside government, inside the industries themselves, in the community, and build bridges. And second, look for levers. What he means is, find practical tools, like a market certification for sustainable forestry, that can actually create change from within the system we already have. And all of this brings us right back to the beginning, doesn't it? We've looked at the personal concerns of students. We've seen all the powerful players at the table. We've crunched some of the hard data, and we've explored a few ways people are trying to take action. So in this incredibly complex, messy, and important picture of Canada's environment, the last question really is for you. What's your role in all this?